Welcome back, everybody. I want to start by showing you a little skit. It's going to make you laugh, but it also has implications with everything we're talking about, and it's going to tie into the church committee, which we'll talk about right afterwards. So this is from an account named Vame. You should go subscribe to him. It's an old video, but it's hilarious. It talks about the NSA, so enjoy.
I get the guys in caves, I get the guys with backpacks, I get the guys looking up things they shouldn't online. I'm having a hard time with this guy. Why are we looking at him so closely?
You don't understand this guy, Mr. Terrorist.
But where's the proof? We're just assuming.
You need me to break this down for you? Okay, look at the thick rimmed glasses. Look at the red shirt. That's communism and a suitcase bomber all in one. Then he's got the silo salt and pepper shakers. I'm sorry. I want to sleep tonight, safely, in the blanket of freedom. Open and shut case.
Again, really? The guy playing with his dog? The guy playing with his dog is a threat to national security.
Yeah, his trained dog to carry anthrax into the Pentagon? No thank you.
You know, we're just going to have to agree to disagree with this one, okay?
Yeah, because, one of us agrees on how to keep the country safe, and the other one disagrees that justice is the way. This is what we do, man. We keep America safe.
Wait a minute.
It's like you don't even care.
I think he's choking. He's choking.
He's got it under control.
We got to call someone. We have to call someone.
We don't call anybody. This guy's got it.
No, he's dying in front of us.
He's not dying. Liberty's going to die in front of us if we pick up that phone. We observe and we report. Okay, this is the best part of the job. This is the system working itself out.
What?
I'm just going to give you one of these, pal. It's been like an honor serving with you.
Not right now.
No, we're going to get a medal for this.
Medals for watching someone die behind a desk.
All right, why don't you just take 5? Just go grab a cup of coffee, take a breather. I got this. I'll keep watch.
It's perfect. Absolutely hilarious. And so true, right? So we got to make comedy of it, but we wouldn't be making comedy like this if we didn't have things in reality to base our comedy off of. And today we'll talk about the church committee, which was probably the greatest revelation of the method to ever occur on the floor of Congress. It's from the 94th Congress, Second Session, Senate, Supplementary Detailed Staff Reports on Intelligence Activities and the Rights of Americans. So this was a committee that investigated what the FBI, the CIA, the IRS, and the NSA, and some other organizations, what they were up to after World War II. And when people talk about Project Mockingbird and MK Ultra and Paperclip and a lot of stuff like that, we got a lot of that evidence from the church committee. And we'll go through the table of contents so you guys will understand what we're looking at. This happened during the 70s. It was publicized. It was on television. But just like today, people didn't really pick up on it. So it's about 1,000 pages. Here are some of the major topics. So COINTELPRO. What is COINTELPRO? It's an acronym, Counterintelligence Program. It is the FBI's covert action programs against American citizens. Another subject is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s case study. We have the FBI's covert action program to destroy the Black Panther Party. We have the use of informants in FBI intelligence investigations. We have warrantless FBI electronic surveillance, warrantless surreptitious entries, FBI black bag break-ins, and microphone installations. Black bagging is sneaking up on someone and literally throwing a black bag over their head and kidnapping them. We have the development of FBI domestic intelligence investigations. We have Domestic Central Intelligence Agency and FBI mail opening. We have the CIA intelligence collection about Americans, the Chaos Program, and the Office of Security. We got the National Security Agency surveillance affecting Americans, improper surveillance of private citizens by the military. We have the Internal Revenue Service, an intelligence resource and collector. the national security, civil liberties, and the collection of intelligence, a report on the Huston Plan. Then they go on to list some of the staff members. There's a more broken down table of contents right here, so we're going to pick and choose a few things to read. Introduction and summary, Counterintelligence Program, a misnomer for domestic covert action. 4. So we're going to start there on page 4. And the Senate basically discovers that this COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program, it's a false name. It's not what it sounds like. It's actually domestic covert action involving not only FBI, but CIA, military, IRS, NSA. Let's read about it a little bit. Okay. The FBI's covert action programs against American citizens. And you might be wondering why we didn't talk about World War II. It's a big subject. That definitely deserves its own episode. But one of the last things we talked about was the gold seizure of 1933. And then after that, World War II occurs and pulls us out of the Great Depression. World War II marks the basically sealing of the deal, right? There were many things before World War II that had to take place to make all of this work. They had to incorporate DC. They had to take the gold. They had to institute the Federal Reserve. And there was a real risk in doing all of these things. There was a risk of uprising. Like, this is real life. Like, you know, there's always a chance these people are going to get caught. But they didn't. So after World War II, all of those things are in place. The corporation, the Federal Reserve, all the power structure, the international globalist, you know, the whole structure is in place. So now the war goes from sort of this logistic stuff to war on the American people. Now they can focus all their energy and all their attention on using the American people to carry out the great work, to carry out the next stage in their plan. And we learned last episode, the next stage is a shift from post-industrialism to neo-colonialism, the end of manufacturing, the end of industry, and the new age of colonizing the mind, the new age of retail, of service industry, the age we live in now. So after World War II is when all of this domestic surveillance, social engineering, and all of this crap really takes full force. So let's read about COINTELPRO. It is the FBI acronym for a series of covert action programs directed against domestic groups. In these programs, the Bureau went beyond the collection of intelligence to secret action designed to disrupt and neutralize target groups and individuals. The techniques were adopted wholesale from wartime counterintelligence and range from the trivial, mailing reprints of Reader's Digest articles to college administrators, to the degrading, sending anonymous poison pen letters intended to break up marriages, and the dangerous, encouraging gang warfare and falsely labeling members of a violent group as police informers. That last part, encouraging gang warfare, remember the Tavistock Institute? What was one of the things they created at the same time as this? The idea of gains and counter-gains. That was thought of by people like Bertrand Russell at the Tavistock Institute in London, a think tank, an international think tank, closely associated with the royal family. And they came up with the concept of gain and counter gains. And you can see their cohorts in the United States, the FBI, are going after people because of their involvement in gains. You see how this is all tied together, how all these people are working both sides of the playing field. I won't go back to the Tavistock document, but actually I'll show you the Executive Intelligence Review of 1996, May 24. Sun never sets on the new British Empire. You can go down and read the article, Tavistock's Imperial Brainwashing Project, and you'll learn all about how, at the very exact same time, the idea of gains were being created. So Tavistock created the gains, and the FBI used the gains to encourage warfare and falsely label members of violent groups as police informers, and therefore to have complete control over these communities. Pretty disgusting way to control society. Let's continue. This report is based on a staff study of more than 20,000 pages of Bureau documents, depositions of many of the Bureau agents involved in the programs, and interviews of several COINTELPRO targets. The examples selected for discussion necessarily represent a small percentage of the more than 2,000 approved COINTELPRO actions. Nevertheless, the cases demonstrate the consequences of a government agency's decision to take the law into its own hands for the greater good of the country. COINTELPRO began in 1956, in part because of frustration with Supreme Court rulings limiting the government's power to proceed overtly against dissident groups. This is important because by 1956, we had already had a police action in Korea. We had already overthrown Guatemala's government. We had already overthrown Iran's government. We were messing around in all hemispheres, doing all sorts of overt intelligence and physical military action against dissident groups. So Congress and people were aware of what we were doing across the world. This wasn't hidden, and there was action to try and limit the power of groups like the CIA and the power of groups like the FBI, but at that point, it was already too late. By 1956, they were already in full swing. It ended in 1971 with the threat of public exposure. There you go. In the intervening 15 years, the Bureau conducted a sophisticated vigilante operation aimed squarely at preventing the exercise of First Amendment rights of speech and association, on the theory that preventing the growth of dangerous groups and the propagation of dangerous ideas would protect the national security and deter violence. This stuff never ended. Never ended. Many of the techniques used would be intolerable in a democratic society, even if all of the targets had been involved in violent activity. Wow. But COINTELPRO went far beyond that. The unexpressed major premise of the program was that a law enforcement agency has the duty to do whatever is necessary to combat perceived threats to the existing social and political order. Unbelievable. So here are the published targeted groups during the years 1956 to 71. The Communist Party of the USA, the Socialist Workers' Party, the White Hate Group, the Black Nationalist Hate Group, and the New Left. And they're going to explain here how these labels mean nothing, and how, in fact, regular good Christians fall under both white hate and black hate groups, according to the FBI. So, labels without meaning. The Bureau's titles for its programs should not be accepted uncritically. They imply a precision of definition and a targeting which did not exist. Even the names of the latter programs had no clear definition. The Black Nationalist Program, according to its supervisor, included a great number of organizations that you might not today characterize as black nationalist, but which were in fact primarily black. Indeed, the nonviolent Southern Christian Leadership Conference was labeled as a black nationalist hate group. Nor could anyone at the Bureau even define what New Left was, except as more or less an attitude. Furthermore, the actual targets were chosen from a far broader group than the names of the programs would imply. They go on to give examples of that. And what were the purposes of it? The breadth of targeting and lack of substantive content in the descriptive titles of the programs reflect the range of motivations for COINTELPRO activity: protecting national security, preventing violence, and maintaining the existing social and political order by disrupting and neutralizing groups and individuals perceived as threats. That's pretty much the mission statement they did all this under. Let's fast forward a little bit. We're going to go to page 33. It's always a good page to check when you're dealing with anything from the government. Hold on, almost there. Okay. COINTELPRO techniques. The techniques used in COINTELPRO were, and are, used against hostile foreign intelligence agents. Sullivan's testimony that the, quote, rough, tough, dirty business, end quote, of foreign counterintelligence was brought home against domestic enemies. This was corroborated by George Moore, whose racial intelligence section supervised the white hate and black nationalist COINTELPROs. You can trace the origins up and back to foreign intelligence, particularly penetration of the group by the individual informant. Before you can engage in counterintelligence, you must have intelligence. If you have good intelligence and know what it's going to do, you can seed distrust, sow misinformation. The same technique is used in the foreign field. The same technique is used, misinformation, disruption is used in the domestic groups. Although in the domestic groups you are dealing in 67 and 68 with many, many more across the country than you had ever dealt with as far as your foreign groups. Weird language. But basically they're saying they infiltrate these groups and then they sow distrust and misinformation. And that's a bold statement. You could apply that to everything. Every classroom, they've planted people, whether it's Tavistock or a program from our own government. In every classroom, in every government school, everywhere, every political office, they have sown misinformation and distrust to the point where reality as we perceive it isn't true at all. The arsenal of techniques used in the Bureau's secret war against domestic enemies range from the trivial to the life-endangering. Slightly more than a quarter of all approved actions were intended to promote factionalization within groups and between groups. A roughly equal number of actions involved the creation and dissemination of propaganda. This is exactly how they hold power. Divide and conquer. This is the Hegelian dialectic. It's right in the words of our own Senate. Here they say, 25% of all approved actions were intended to promote factionalization within groups and between groups. Other techniques involve the use of federal, state, and local agencies in selective law enforcement and other use and abuse of government processes, disseminating derogatory information to family, friends, and associates, contacting employers, exposing communist infiltration or support of target groups, and using organizations which were hostile to target groups to disrupt meetings or otherwise attack the targets. So how could they get law enforcement on the local level to go along with this? Well, because every master sergeant, sergeant, and above in every police station is a member of the Fraternal Order of Police. And we've done episodes on this plenty of times. You can go Wikipedia, Fraternal Order of Police. And if you've watched a few of my episodes, once you see their symbol, you'll know what we're dealing with right away. We have, just like Bill Cooper, who we're going to look at, tells us when he was in the Navy, all the brass were high up Masons, all the leaders of policing down to the community level are members of Masons. And if they're not Masons, they're members of the Fraternal Order of Police, which is a Masonic-controlled institution that controls policing in America. So the intelligence services in our country, through Freemasonry, were able to carry out all their techniques of COINTELPRO all the ways down to the community level. I've gone to a few different groups regarding community stuff here in Maine, and it really makes you think, really makes you wonder. Every church, like I said, every church, every classroom, every social group, still to this day, are full of people. This is what all the tax money goes to. There is an army of people engineering society, and some of them are your neighbors. So one of their techniques is propaganda. The Bureau's COINTELPRO propaganda efforts stem from some basic premise as the attacks on speaking, teaching, writing, and meeting. Let me reread that. The Bureau's COINTELPRO propaganda efforts stem from the same basic premise as the attacks on speaking, teaching, writing, and meeting. Propaganda works. Certain ideas are dangerous, and if their expression cannot be prevented, they should be countered with Bureau-approved views. Well, what kind of ideas are dangerous? That God is real? And that God is watching? Because at the same time, they were putting that subliminal message into television sign-off, government-approved television sign-offs. Think about that. So on one hand, the government believes, well, these Freemasons believe, that certain ideas are dangerous, and it's the government's job to prevent them from being discussed. So they tell us evolution and the Big Bang Theory and globe theory are all true, blah, blah, blah. They push socialist ideas like that and atheistic ideas in the public. But then we talked about revelation of the method. That's why they put that subliminal message there. The subliminal message of God is real, God is watching. That's karmic relief. That's revelation of the method. Wow. That's crazy. 3 basic techniques were used. 1, mailing reprints of newspaper and magazine articles to group members or potential supporters intended to convince them of the error of their ways. 2, writing articles for our furnishing information to friendly media sources to expose target groups. And 3, writing, printing, and disseminating pamphlets and flyers without identifying the Bureau as the source. So, the church committee, some of it was on TV, and during the televised portion, these intelligence agency representatives being questioned by Congress admit that at the height of it, they had at least 400 paid media assets in the mainstream media. And you got to remember, there was like 3 television channels back then. So this is like magazines, newspapers, the 3 television channels, radio, the whole thing was controlled by the intelligence agencies of America. And it still is, completely, absolutely. Yeah, so reprint mailings, friendly media, let's read it. Much of the Bureau's propaganda efforts involved giving information or articles to friendly media sources who could be relied upon not to reveal the Bureau's interest. The Crime Records Division of the Bureau was responsible for public relations, including all headquarters contacts with the media. In the course of its work, most of which had nothing to do with COINTELPRO, the division assembled a list of friendly news media sources, those who wrote pro-Bureau stories. Field offices also had confidential sources, unpaid Bureau informants, in the media, and were able to ensure their cooperation. The Bureau's use of the news media took two different forms, placing unfavorable articles and documentaries about targeted groups, and leaking derogatory information intended to discredit individuals. A typical example of media propaganda is the headquarters letter authorizing the Boston field office to furnish derogatory information about the Nation of Islam to establish source name, redacted. Yeah, okay. Think about that. This was 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, early 70s, and they were already preparing the anti-Islamic, anti-Muslim narrative that would be ushered in during the 90s, right? It's all very well orchestrated and planned out. It's crazy. In another case, information on the Junta of Militant Organizations, or JOMO, a black nationalist target, was furnished to a source at a Tampa television station. Ironically, the station manager, who had no knowledge of the Bureau's involvement, invited the special agent in charge, his assistant, and other agents to a preview of the half-hour film, which resulted. The SAC complimented the station manager on his product and suggested that it be made available to civic groups. He had no clue he was dealing with 4 or 5 intelligence agents. Wow. A Miami television station made 4 separate documentaries on the Klan, black nationalist groups, and the New Left, with materials secretly supplied by the Bureau. One of the documentaries, which had played to an estimated audience of 200,000, was the subject of an internal memorandum, quote, to advise a highly successful results of counterintelligence exposing the black extremist Nation of Islam, end quote. Unbelievable. The Bureau also planted derogatory articles about the Poor People's Campaign, the Institute for Policy Studies, the Southern Students Organizing Committee, the National Mobilization Committee, and a host of other organizations it believed needed to be seen in their true light. Holy crap. And most of these organizations were Tavistock creations to begin with, because a lot of these student organizations were the, ground zero for the counterculture movement. They infiltrated the school system, and they were able to start the counterculture movement by helping organize the students and help pushing them along with the propaganda. So once again, we can see the FBI, the colleges, the Tavistock Institute, they're all working together. Crazy. 3. Bureau authorized pamphlets and flyers. The Bureau occasionally drafted, printed, and distributed its own propaganda. These pieces were usually intended to ridicule their targets rather than offer straight propaganda on the issue. 4 of these flyers are reproduced in the following pages. Wow. I'm not sure what this could be, but we have SWP on the wing. It says New Moby with a peace sign. Oh, it's got words too, and then it says balls under it. Fly United. Dig it. It's time to pull the chain, brothers and sisters. If the peace movement in America is to survive, the crap influence of the Socialist Workers' Party and its bastard youth group, Young Socialist Alliance, must be flushed from the new MOB once and for all. Oh my gosh. So this is a FBI-created piece of propaganda meant to stoke the flames between two groups that otherwise have probably identical goals. It's just like today where you have patriots that want small government and freedom, and you have Antifa fighting the same corrupt government, and we don't even realize we're fighting for the same goals. Literally. We're both fighting to end corruption, and we're both targeting the same corrupt individuals, and we should both be on the same team, the left and the right now. But we're not, because they intentionally divide us. This is the Hegelian dialectic, a wonderful example. Here's the FBI printing propaganda to pit this black nationalist group, I believe, against the Young Socialist Alliance and the Socialist Workers' Party, which still exists today. It's quite prominent in Portland. That's fascinating. Here's some more. Wow. That's crazy. Here's another one. SDS, Students for a Democratic Society, the American Comics. My folks busted their humps to send me to college, but I took up with SDS, the third world, and revolution. I dug the gross bit in balling them radical Okay, I see what's going on. See how he goes from college, he goes from a clean-cut kid, and then he turns into this hippie. Wow, dude. Wow. So you have to picture these Freemasons who are the brass of the CIA, the FBI. They're playing the left side. I mean, the right side of the Hegelian dialectic. They're playing the Republican side of it, right? And then you have groups like the Tavistock Institute through the colleges, through the human relations industry, controlling the left side of it. So you have Tavistock creating college lefties, and you have Freemasons in the government spying on them and creating the right wing, all at the same time through propaganda. So there's your left-right paradigm. That it came from the intelligence agencies, obviously. What dicks. Unbelievable. So here's another example. Off the pigs, power to the people, Soul Brother Jake. Sound familiar? Antifa? Black Lives Matter? This is from the early 60s probably. And it's FBI-created propaganda calling for black people to off the pigs, power to the people, under the pseudonym Soul Brother Jake. This is exactly what they're doing with Black Lives Matter today. Rest in peace to the hundreds of people probably that have died as a result from this stupid movement of BLM and Antifa, completely created by the government. Anonymous mailings, that's always effective. Here's another one, off the pigs. Ugh. Interviews. Interviewing group members or supporters was an overt investigative technique, sometimes used for the covert purpose of disruption. For example, one field office noted that other BPP weaknesses that have been capitalized on include interviews of members wherein jealousy among the members has been stimulated and at the same time has caused a number of persons to fall under suspicion and be purged from the party. Classic. So they can do this with a honey trap as well, right? They can send a young woman into the leadership of one of these air quote threatening groups, and they can sow jealousy in between two people. You know, if they find out that two members, high up members of one of these groups are after the same woman, perfect in. This is how these intelligence agencies work. And this ultimately at the end of the day is just black magic, fallen angel intelligence, and it's just infested our government. It's disgusting. Unbelievable. This goes on forever, guys. It's 1,000 pages. So this is the source material for a lot of the stuff you probably see on YouTube and you see all over the internet. So don't think that when the news says these are all conspiracy theories, do not believe them, because this was what, 60 years ago, pretty much, and 60 years ago they controlled the media. So I mean, now we got them. We got them dead in their tracks. I definitely recommend you find this and download it. It can be found from our own government. You can download it. Supplementary detailed staff reports on intelligence activities and rights of Americans, or just look up Church Committee. You can also watch the televised portion, which is really good. So we bring all this up because it lines up perfectly with what we talked about with the Tavistock Institute when we read Tavistock's Imperial Brainwashing Project. Colonialism still exists in its most powerful form as a state of mind of the subject peoples. So to kind of sum things up, remember, we have to shift, according to the controllers, we have to shift from the post-industrial world into the neo-colonial world, which involves an end of industry, the birth of service industry, which is what we live in today, and of course, colonizing of the mind, which they're doing through massive traumatic mind control, through stuff like C-19, through race wars, and the election is a huge psyop. What they've done to the left and right by having Trump just bow out, it's so obvious that they're just dividing the people, and it's just a humiliation ritual. It's so evil. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff Tavistock was doing, mixed with the American intelligence. Remember, this is all controlled by the fraternities, the orders, the secret societies, the brotherhoods. It's not controlled by the people. It's not controlled by the Congress. So we have all these groups working together across national borders. And after World War II, we start seeing that the Western world is all starting to get on the same page with things. Of course, we have the UN being formed, right? So all of a sudden, we're all starting to get the same propaganda. How weird is that? Before World War II, we had many sovereign nations. Some had kings, some had queens, some had parliaments, some had oligarchies, some had autocracies, some had dictators, but the world was very dynamic. And after World War II, it became very static. Everything became the same. Just like Thomas Friedman's book, The World is Flat. That's what he means when he says that. It means that we all kind of became the same. And because of the UN, we all really started getting the same propaganda. And because of the UN, these intelligence communities could all coordinate with one another. And of course, through the brotherhoods, societies, secret orders, and all of that as well, they stay connected. So, where I want to take this next is, I'm thinking Bill Cooper. Now, before I say that, though, because all of their big tasks are done, this is going to be where it's going to get crazy. We're going to talk about space and stuff. We're going to talk about NASA, and it's going to get unbelievable. But we learned from stuff like the Church Committee that after World War II, this was through Freedom of Information Act, we found out about something called Project Paperclip, where the United States absorbed the majority of the Nazi intellectual class, industrial class. Basically, anybody who could benefit the United States was absorbed after the war, allegedly because they didn't want Russia to get a hold of these scientists. But we all know everybody's on the same team, so they were just saving their friends, really. And one of those friends was Wernher von Braun, who was basically the father of NASA and the first director of NASA. And we're going to talk about that because this is one of the massive psyops, Tavistock-style psyops pulled on the American people, this idea of space and space travel. But before we do that, we should read the foreword from Behold a Pale Horse by Milton William Cooper. If you don't know who he is, you got to go listen to his radio show from the 90s called The Hour of the Time and listen to Mystery Babylon. It's like 40 hours long, and you'll get a complete understanding of the mystery schools, the secret societies, and the true nature of power in this world. It's a picture of him and his daughter. He was murdered right after 9/11. He told us they would blame Osama. He told us they would destroy the Twin Towers on his radio show, and then they killed him. He was in the military. Here's his profile at togetherweserved.com. And I want to show you this because, no other man gets more slander than Bill Cooper. And they want you to think that he was a military dropout or that he was just a grunt and then left the military right away. But no, he had a very long and distinguished career. He received Medals of Valor in Vietnam. He was in the Air Force and Navy. He was in the Office of Naval Intelligence. He fought bravely. And there's a little profile here. So if you want to check it out, togetherweserved.com. Here's patches from the boats he was on and the units he was a member of. So yeah, they killed him right after 9/11. And basically on his show, he warned us that we were living inside of a grand illusion. And he didn't try to force any, ideals or opinions. He was simply using history to expose the true nature of politics and the deception, the massive deception in everything about America. So we're going to read the foreword just to commemorate this great man. The one thing I find most difficult is to write about myself. It is hard to understand why some people thirst for knowledge about me. It was never my intention to be anyone's hero. I'm certainly no great example upon which to base one's life. I consider myself a very average, normal kind of guy. I have some pretty good points. I have some human failings. I am proud of some of my achievements, and there are things that I wish I had not done. I'm not perfect, and I am not sure that I ever want to be. But it is certain that I do not belong on anyone's pedestal. I am a man with a message, and the message will be accepted by only a few. To those few who will understand, I am your brother. Maybe we can change the future for the better. I wanted to read that because I want to extend that message to all of you. We're living through something crazy. This is nuts. If I didn't have this small handful of viewers, I'd be nuts. This is what me and my roommate were just talking about. It's literally, we feel like we're completely alone in a city of like 80,000 people. Like the whole city is completely zombified. It's a herd of sheep. They're double masking in Portland, Maine. It's crazy. Most places I can't even use cash. In most stores, there are still paths on the floor, and all the customers have to walk in a certain circle path around the store. It's really, really bad where I live, and I want to I wanted to read this because you guys understand. And to you guys, I am your brother. Absolutely. I feel exactly that way. And I think we can change the future for the better. Absolutely. I wish he was alive to see what he created. Without Bill Cooper, there would be no Alex Jones. There would be no InfoWars. There would be no Truth Community. There would have been no QAnon PSYOP. There would have been none of this stuff. If it is a PSYOP, I don't pay attention to it anymore. We would have no... We would be 99 or 100% zombified without Bill Cooper, I believe, personally. And I think we're probably sitting around 15% of the population being aware of the truth, 10 to 15%, and that's thanks to Bill Cooper. We only have a fighting chance, I believe, because of a few men, and Bill Cooper is one of them in modern times. Good stuff. We'll just leave it there. Definitely need to read this book. You can download it off Archive. Behold a Pale Horse. And also check out his Mystery Babylon portion of the Hour of the Time. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it. You can download it. I recommend you download it, not on YouTube. Find it somewhere archived and start listening to it like before bed or when you're working out or driving or something. Very enlightening. Anyway, I wanted to talk about him because we're getting into the modern time. And a lot of the stuff I'm about to show you happened while he was doing his radio show. And I was too young to remember any of it, but oh man, it's just crazy. Thinking about what we've lived through, if you're around my age, 30 years old, it's wild. And I want to show you a line from the Tavistock study real quick. Because from about 1990 till today has been a continuous assault on the minds of Americans. And they do it through trauma-induced mind control. So we're going to do a little slideshow of all these events. And you're going to see how they're using this trauma to brainwash us very clearly. So here they talk about what the Tavistock Institute calls social turbulence. Let's read it. Tavistock had clinically proven, that's powerful, clinically proven, that an individual will make such choices when placed under extreme stress, and most importantly, will fail to see the rejection of the parameters of the choice itself as an option. Emery and Trist reported that if society were put through extreme stress, what they termed social turbulence, the appropriate degenerated and psychotic mental states could be induced in the mass of Western population to make a choice for a post-industrial future. When they say post-industrial, they mean neo-colonial. They mean your house is the prison. You're home all the time. You don't own anything. Agenda 2030, the United Nations, that's post-industrial. What they're saying here is they have clinically proven that extreme stress will cause people to make irrational choices. It'll also cause a phenomenon of herd instinct, where the whole of society will make an irrational choice. And here's a perfect example. Because I live in the middle of a city suffering from this. The vast majority of people in Portland, Maine see two options. Don't wear the mask, get sick and die, or wear the mask, be safe and stop the spread. And I know that sounds funny, but those are the only two choices to most people here. Think about that. That's it. There is no third choice. To people like you and me, there's a third choice. And our choice is to do a little homework and then choose to ignore all this because it's all ridiculous. These people don't have that choice. These people don't have the critical thinking. And Tavistock Institute in London clinically proved that using extreme stress, they can make people fail to see the rejection of the parameters of the choice itself as an option. They don't have the third option. They don't have it. How could society get to this? How? Well, layers and layers and layers of deception. And that's where one of the places NASA comes in, was prepping people, helping create a false reality so that people without even knowing it are just wrong about everything. And I think where we should start, we're not going to do like a full background thing. I am going to show you a great website from a truther I follow who I trust completely. I'll give you good sources for space stuff. I'm just going to tell you real quick, though. Please have an open mind right now. Here's a simple graphic. spherical trigonometry of a sphere with a 3,959-mile radius. Pythagorean theorem for curvature for a ball with a radius of 3,959 miles. Using AutoCAD software, 2016 with 15-digit precision. So, a lot of words, but very, 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 very fundamental, simple math. Very simple trigonometry. We live, allegedly, on an oblate spheroid, pretty darn close to a sphere. If we actually live on a ball, understand that for every mile, the horizon is going to drop 0.67 feet or 8 inches. So if I'm standing on a completely flat parking lot that's 1 mile long, the horizon should drop 8 inches. Very simple. Very simple. Now, we live in a time of technology. There is no excuse for us not to be able to find the truth. I'm just saying, like I said, I'm not going to sit on this for a while. I'm just saying, you guys, go check out Taboo Conspiracies channel. Go check out RV Truth's channel. Because, I mean, this guy went out there with his dad, completely level on each side of the Great Salt Lake, and using lasers and Nikon D900 cameras. With lasers, you can see the laser inches off the ground 21 miles away. There's no curvature. If there was curvature, planes would have to land with the nose down. They land with the nose up. It's simple things like that. We're not going to get too far into it, all right? But I encourage you to go check out Taboo Conspiracy, RV Truth. I mean, there's tons of great places. More importantly, I encourage you to go do an experiment yourself. Go climb a mountain. Go drive up a mountain and think about it. I encourage you to find this graphic. I encourage you to bust out the old T83 Plus and start playing around with the trigonometry. Start looking at a sphere. Start reading the Bible from the beginning, right? And start really thinking about it. Is the sun setting or is it just getting farther away? Because when you stand on a flat highway, technically those light poles, they get smaller and smaller, and one could mistake that for setting, but they're not getting smaller, right? It's the perspective, and that's what's going on with the sun. I'll show you a map real quick. I know you all want to see the maps, probably. I downloaded a bunch of maps. I'll do a different episode. Not only did I download maps, I downloaded like software because these things are like 10 billion pixels. I got some of the best maps. It's hard to believe, I know. It's hard to believe, but this is basically a flat Earth map. And there is no Antarctica. In fact, Antarctica is a wall surrounding the plane that God created. We are living under a firmament. The Bible is the true cosmology, and it's the same cosmology that pretty much every major ancient civilization had. So the only different civilization throughout history is the United States of America and their modern idea of ball theory. Let me show you real quick. So basically the way this works is, hold on. Ultimately, this is what this symbol is. Hold on. This is a bird's eye view of the true cosmology of where we live. Do you see it now? The yin and yang? That is how day and night works. Yeah, it's not setting or not spinning. It's just getting farther away. The sun's not 93 million miles away. The sun is not 400 times bigger than the Earth. And if we really get into this, you can actually look at the mathematics and find where the humans interjected the numbers. You can find how they came up with the size of the ball Earth. They're humans. They left a trail. And if you really want to get into that, here's the template they used. Yeah. So if you take the Great Pyramid of Giza and then mirror it downwards, it's basically going to square the circle. So they used the Great Pyramid to map out ball theory. They used the dimensions of the pyramid. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the Pyramid of Khufu, the biggest one, represents the northern hemisphere mathematically. We're not going to talk about those numbers, but I encourage you to go look that up. So if you ask me, sounds like when they came up with ball theory back in the day, they chose to use their most sacred, beloved icon for the dimensions of it. Pretty wild, right? But like I said, dude, the laser test, 21 miles with no curvature, when for 1 mile there should be 8 inches of curvature? 21 times 8? 21 times 20 times 8 would be 160. Yeah, I don't see any curvature. Anyway, let me show you those sources, and then we can move on. We'll talk about false flags. Some of you are probably very triggered. I understand. Aplaintruth.info, APLANETRUTH.info, plain as in like a flat plane with an E at the end. This guy's been on YouTube. He's been online forever. He's got a great website. This is somebody I trust. So just look at some of these undeniable facts, whether it's every single man who's ever walked on the moon being a Freemason and refusing to swear that they walked on the moon on a holy Bible. Go watch the documentary Astronauts Gone Wild. That guy in the documentary gets attacked by Buzz Aldrin. They just all happen to be Freemasons. All planets happen to be named after Roman gods. Every space mission happens to be named after the gods. There's tons of evidence, and we could talk about it forever. Basically, after World War II, Werner von Braun was taken from Nazi Germany to work on the rocket program because the true intention of all these rockets was to see if they could break God's firmament. Operation High Jump and Operation Fishbowl, go look them up. High altitude nuclear test that they did for years. What were they doing? They were trying to break the firmament, and they failed. And NASA just became a massive psychological operation / ritual commemorating their gods, whether it's Apollo, Hermes, Artemis. They just did a new space program called Artemis. You got to understand, these rockets are nothing more than obelisks. NASA is the number one way they launder all of our money. Yeah. It's disgusting. Anyway, one last thing about space. This should seal the deal for some of you. Hold on. Where did I put it? Werner von Braun, who was a Nazi and the first director of NASA. Here's his grave. Werner von Braun. He's got a Bible quote here. Psalms 19:1. Psalms 19:1. I have 3 Bibles next to me. I have a generic Good News Catholic Bible. I have a very expensive Catholic Family Bible. This is intended to be passed down generation to generation. And I also have an official Reds, I think that's the author's name, Masonic Bible as well, this would be on the altar. One of the books on the altar of a Masonic lodge. Also like a family edition, so you can write your family or kids' names or their dates of different stuff. Let us start with the common Good News Bible. This is the Bible that most Catholics would carry, probably $20, $30. You got to think, most people don't read the Bible, and most people who own a Bible are just going to go buy a cheap one. Nobody's going to compare Bibles like this unless they're like us. So what is it? Psalms 19:1. Give me a moment. Okay, so in the regular Joe Schmo Bible, it says Psalms 19:1. God's glory in creation. How clearly the sky reveals God's glory. How plainly it shows what he has done. Each day announces it to the following day. Each night repeats it to the next. No speech or words are used. No sound is heard. Yet their message goes out to all the world and is heard to the ends of the earth. God made a home in the sky for the sun. It comes out in the morning like a happy bridegroom, like an athlete eager to run a race. So you can see there's a word missing there. Some of you already know this. And it kind of sounds a little, God made a home in the sky for the sun. It comes out in the morning. It's just too close to the morning star, to Lucifer's speech. But remember, that's the Bible they want the peasant to read. So this is also a Catholic Bible. Both of these are only Catholic. This one, big white one, and this one. They're not published for any other group. Except this Catholic one, see Catholic edition right there? This one will tell you it's approved by the Episcopal Committee as well. That's weird. Let's read Psalms 19:1 out of this Bible. So remember, the odds of an average person having this Bible, they're not high. This is for somebody who either knows the truth or who is, I don't know, maybe in some sort of group. Okay. Or just wealthy. Psalms 19:1, God's glory in creation and the law. To the choir master, a psalm of David. 1. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and the firmament proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night declares knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard. Yet their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. It's completely different. It's completely different. But did you hear the second line? The heavens are telling the glory of God, and the firmament proclaims his handiwork. So, that's Psalms 19:1. Let me go back real quick. Psalm 19:1. This is on Werner von Braun's grave. A biblical passage talking about God's handiwork, the firmament. Google what the firmament is if you don't know what it is. We live under a dome. Let's read it out of the Masonic Bible. Psalm 19:1. The creatures shew God's glory, the word his grace. To the chief musician, a psalm of David. 1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Which one do you think Werner von Braun's talking about? Obviously, he's talking about God's firmament, from which no man has ever traveled past. I know that's shocking, but this is the craft. This is precisely what the craft of Masonry is. This is why Freemasonry is evil. Yeah, it's shocking. Let me show you one last thing. Just to prove to you, they mock us. First of all, this flat earth map can be found all over the place. They hide it in television shows. They hide it in movies. It's ridiculous. There are 33 sections on this map, obviously, representing the 33 degrees. Just look at how obvious it is. Hold on. Let me rotate this. There you go. Give me a break. There it is. Right in front of your eyes. The UN flag is a flat earth map. There's a treaty that bans all of us from going to Antarctica. Understand that. Like, if you actually go check out the requirements to sign up to get a permit to go to Antarctica, and you actually know how limited of space you can go to, you can't even leave your own feces on Antarctica. That's how strict the rules are. They will issue you poop and pee bags to bring on your trip. It's ridiculous. And it's recognized by all the nations of the world. So don't be surprised when all the nations of the world pretend space is real as well. Because this world is not God's. Look at that. Sick. Mockery. Once again. So, I want to bring that up because this craft, this Masonic craft, now that World War II is over, oh boy. They just focus all their attention on engineering society, whether it's Tavistock, Freemasonry, United States military, FBI, NSA, CIA, IRS, ATF after a while. And things really start to change. Firearm Owners Protection Act banned machine guns of many things in the 1980s. It was pretty much an amendment to an earlier gun control act. But they banned the importation of machine guns into the United States, meaning that the machine guns in the United States at the time of 1986 are the only machine guns that will ever be in the United States. So it's a closed market, meaning a machine gun now is $30,000 for a nice one, which is ridiculous and completely against the Second Amendment. But remember, we're a corporation now. We do not adhere to that Bill of Rights anymore. not since 1871. So, this is really a turning point. I was born right after this happened. This is when the ATF would become very popular. And then here's a list of like different aspects of firearms that the ATF and the federal government have intervened in. Assault weapons, which is not a real term. They've just made up this like fictitious term that they can throw any gun into, and it's stupid. Assault weapons legislation, bump stocks, they want to limit that. Campus carry, concealed carry, constitutional carry, domestic violence offender gun bans, federal assault weapons ban. These are just all different pages on Wikipedia. Look at all of them. They want to create as much bureaucracy as possible, not just with guns, but with all parts of government, because if they create more bureaucracy, they can launder more money by making more jobs, quote, quote, and writing off more expenses to those jobs, quote, quote. So that's what they've done with guns. They've tried to muddy the waters so much, and they've banned things like machine guns. It requires crazy permits in most places to get things like silencers, explosives, machine guns. I mean, and if the thing is, it might sound good on the outside, but it's not. It's not, trust me. And anybody who is anti-gun, wait until they come knocking on your door, taking your kids away for having COVID, right? You're going to be really pro-Second Amendment once that day comes. And you're going to be pissed when you find out that the only guns you're allowed to own in your state are a Mosin Nagant or a 6-shooter revolver, right? There are so many laws in some states. It's ridiculous. But all Americans, without even thinking, should all be on board for the Second Amendment. But you see how their craft has divided us, this Hegelian dialectic? It's like, it's for our own protection. Why would we ever tamper with that Bill of Rights? The Second Bill of Rights. Second Amendment. It's crazy, dude. So crazy. But the war was on. The war was on. So think about it. 1986, what else was going? The war on drugs, right? The crack cocaine epidemic, Barry Seal, Freeway Rick Ross. These were all CIA people. The biggest explosion of horrific drug abuse, the crack cocaine epidemic, was carried out by the Central Intelligence Agency. They were trafficking cocaine from South America into America. At one point into Mena, Arkansas, while Bill Clinton was governor. Yeah. The process of cooking crack cocaine was introduced by our government. The science, the home kitchen science of cooking crack cocaine was perfected and introduced to the people, to the African American community through agents of our government. Because getting them hooked on coke wasn't good enough. And then it justified the militarization of police and the destruction of black communities. And people still think, well, white liberals still think that racism is the problem coming from their fellow countrymen. It's crazy, dude. It's crazy, but this is all starting to happen in the 80s. I mean, the war on drugs is so evil. So evil. And what does the war on drugs cause? This is going to blow your mind right here. It causes AIDS. What are you talking about, Jay? Yeah, causes AIDS. Wow, what's that guy's name? I have his book. We can bring up his book, but Anthony Fauci did the same thing he's doing today with the AIDS epidemic in the drug AZT. They claimed AIDS was caused by, this transmission through homosexual intercourse, through sodomy, blah, 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 and that's why the gay community was dying. No, the gay community was dying from rampant drug abuse, and AIDS is caused by malnutrition. And this is what doctors were saying back in the 80s and 90s, but they were being blacklisted, censored, and shut down just like today. One doctor would travel the country with AIDS patients, and he would give his presentation, and then on stage he would prick the fingers of the AIDS patients and then put the AIDS blood in his body because it was all made up. Let me find his book. The Poison Needle, I think it's called. We'll at least read the cover page or something. Hold on. I can't remember his name, but he calls out Anthony Fauci in the early 90s. It's so funny. There's a video you can find. Yeah, he calls out Fauci piece. How ridiculous, right? Here we go. No, this isn't it. No, this could be it. No, that's not it. But this is a nice little document. You guys, I have an episode about it. Crap. Now we gotta find it. Hold on, let me pause. Okay, I found it. It's called Deadly Deception, The Proof That Sex and HIV Absolutely Do Not Cause AIDS by Robert E. Wilner, MD. And Robert Wilner was the one who would travel the country basically transfusing himself with AIDS blood to prove this. And it was caused by malnutrition. It was caused by starvation. And the homosexual community was targeted by the intelligence agencies and wrapped into the drugs, wrapped into the war on drugs. The gay community, the poor community, the black community were all targets of government-funded drug, I don't even know the word because it's such a horrible thing to say, drug distribution. Drugs were given to these groups, and gays were one of them. Inner city gay people. They were doing coke and heroin, and all of these drugs were being flooded into the city, and all of a sudden these people are junkies, and they can't eat. Just like today. Just like today. AIDS was caused by our own trusted government medical institutions, our own wonderful Dr. Fauci. So download this on archive while you can and look up Robert E. Wilner's lectures. Listen to one of them. It'll change your life forever. Same guy, Dr. Fauci. So we got machine guns being banned. We got the crack epidemic. We got the American government smuggling cocaine. This is bad. This is bad. And then remember Tavistock said they were talking about these, what'd they call them? Social turbulence, right? They were talking about Tavistock had clinically proven that an individual will make such choices when placed under extreme stress, and most importantly, will fail to see the rejection of the parameters of the choice itself as an option. So beginning in the 90s, they start putting the American people through extreme stress. They do this through their control of the media, their control of the narrative, their control of legislation, and their ability to supersede the law. They were able to do things. They were able to hire crisis actors. They were able to create false flags. They were able to kill American citizens without any repercussion. And this trauma suspended the critical thinking of the whole country, as it does to this day. That's what its intention is. You have something like, what's one you guys all know? You have something like Oklahoma City bombing happen where a daycare full of children all die. Everybody's freaking out. Everybody's stressed out. And then the government says, we only have two options right now. We need to, lock down or go to war. And you say, oh no, we either lock down or go to war. You're not even thinking about the fact that you can just not take part in it. You get it? You only see the two options because of the stress. The stress causes you to have tunnel vision, and you only see the two options presented. Just like the face mask thing. You don't see that the third option is to critically think and step away from it all. That's exactly why these events happen. Because I study history all day, every day, and you can't go back in history and find a 5-year span of school shootings where there were hundreds of school shootings, right? Or terrorist attacks, right? You don't see any of these patterns in history. It's because they're engineered by groups like Tavistock and the intelligence agencies and carried out by groups like Freemasons and Jesuits and orchestrated and ordered by groups like the City of London, the UN, Corporation of DC, and the Holy See or the Vatican. So, first one, Ruby Ridge. We're going to go through these pretty quick because I've done an episode about these. Ruby Ridge was the site of an 11-day siege in 1992 in Boundary County, Idaho, near Naples. It began on August 21st when deputies of the United States Marshals Service initiated action to apprehend and arrest Randy Weaver under a bench warrant after his failure to appear on firearms charges. So, right away, 20 years before this, you would never send a military unit. And that's what the Marshals are. They're a military unit. I don't know if they're officially in the armed forces, but they're geared up. You would never send a group like that to issue a bench warrant. That's ridiculous. 20 years before this, you would send the sheriff who would take his hat off when he stepped foot on your property, because that's how America used to be, right? Used to show people respect when you stepped foot on their property. And the sheriff would take his hat off and go up to Mr. Weaver and say, what's going on? And then Mr. Weaver would say, here we go. I was given 3 conflicting dates for the court appearance, and I suspect a conspiracy against me. That was why he didn't show up to court. He He was given 3 separate dates and suspected a conspiracy against him. He had failed to appear, so he was issued a bench warrant. A bench warrant basically is based on money. It's when you owe the court money. If you don't show up, you owe the court money. And they showed up with they dispatched a military unit whose star on their badge is the seal of Remphan, seal of Solomon, with the Roman eagle on it. It is so bad. So bad. So they send the marshals all the way. Look at the map, too. It's all the ways on the Canadian border in the mountains in the middle of nowhere. So they send the marshals. Very weird. Let's continue. Weaver refused to surrender, as would I have, and members of his immediate family and family friend Kevin Harris resisted as well. The hostage rescue team of the FBI became involved. So obviously he was going to refuse to go along with this because this is completely out of the ordinary. It may be ordinary today, but in 1992 it was not ordinary for a marshal's team to breach your property and take you away at gunpoint for a bench warrant. And right when Randy Weaver refused, there's the FBI already in place. Negotiation rescue team. Let's go. Hostage rescue team. You see how orchestrated it all is? These poor people suffer as victims of government tyranny like this. During the Marshals Service reconnoitre of the Weaver property, 6 U.S. Marshals encountered Harris and Sammy Weaver, Randy's 14-year-old son, in the woods near the family cabin. A shootout took place. Deputy U.S. Marshal William Francis Deegan, Sammy Weaver, and the Weaver's dog, Stryker, all died as a result. In the subsequent siege of the Weaver residence led by the FBI, Weaver's wife, Vicky, was killed by FBI sniper fire. All casualties occurred in the first 2 days of the operation. They killed the guy's family. People were outraged when this happened. Absolutely outraged. But you're going to see a pattern. As these events keep happening, the resistance keeps getting less and less and less because we keep getting more desensitized to it. And they used Ruby Ridge to justify things like the 1994 crime bill and a lot of Bill Clinton's legislation trying to limit guns and everything. Basically, they use these events to expand the power of government, to militarize the police, and to strip the rights of the American people, using stress so they don't realize their rights are getting taken, just like Tavistock clinically was able to prove. They put the public through extreme stress, present them 2 options. Both options result in a militarization and a stripping of rights. So no matter what the people choose, they're going to lose. God bless that family. That's so sad. And then it happens again in Waco. Pay attention, the escalation. The Waco siege, also known as the Waco Massacre, was the law enforcement siege of the compound that belonged to the religious sect Branch Davidians, Christians. It was carried out by the U.S. federal government, Texas state law enforcement, and the U.S. military between February 28th and April 19th, 1993. The Branch Davidians were led by David Koresh and were headquartered at Mount Carmel Center Ranch in the community of Axtell, Texas, 13 miles northeast of Waco. Suspecting the group of stockpiling illegal weapons, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms obtained a search warrant for the compound and arrest warrants for Koresh, as well as a select few of the group's members. We won't go into details. Here are the parties involved in the conflict. On the left, you have all of these groups that were going up against a group of Christians. But then again, that is a very suspect symbol for a flag. I don't know anything about Branch Davidians, but I do believe in the Constitution, and I believe in people's religious freedom. And regardless of what the Branch Davidians practiced, what the federal government did was evil, orchestrated, intentional, and wrong. Basically, they sent in tanks. It was big. It was like they burned down the whole complex. 25 children burned to death. 2 pregnant women burned to death. Something like 76 of the Branch Davidians died, and a handful of marshals and military died or whatever. But tragic. The whole place was engulfed in flames. They intentionally burned it down and claimed it was an accident. This was all based on, I think, a mail truck. Like a package fell over and some weapons were in it, and the mail was for the Waco place. And I think that's what they used to justify this. And once again, a huge overreach. And you can see how powerful these events are in shaping the public and shaping legislation, right? And we can also see how easy it is for these things to be pulled off, because there doesn't have to be proof and there doesn't have to be evidence when the judge you're going to obtain a search warrant is a Freemason, just like you are, right? Because the oaths that these societies hold with one another overpower the oath they take to you and I every day of the week. 8 ways to Sunday. So obtaining a search warrant, getting away with this, that's how they do it. They're members of fraternities, orders, groups, societies. They do it again. The Oklahoma City bombing was a domestic terrorist truck bombing of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. This one, they blamed Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols. Timothy McVeigh is a white, right-wing, ex-military guy, of course. I think he was executed recently. And of course, they want to promote the agenda of Christians being fundamentalists, white people being fundamentalists, of course. What they don't tell you, though, is that he was an outstanding soldier. He tried out. He was in the personal bodyguard of the general in charge of Desert Storm on the ground. He tried out for Special Forces, where the military officially says he dropped out because of an injury. But months after that, after being allegedly, excluded from Special Forces, he was filmed inside of a motor pool working on a vehicle on a military base by some local news crew that was taking a tour. So a lot of people think he was sheep-dipped, meaning it was made to look like he left the military when really he was hired on Special Forces. So there's a lot of sketchy stuff. Ted Gunderson and many, 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 many other people. James Corbett has great stuff on this. Even Alex Jones. This is what made Alex Jones famous, was exposing this. It's undeniable that the government was involved and that there's no way a truck bomb did the damage you're seeing on your screen. This killed a lot of people, at least 168. There was a daycare that was full of children that all died. The ATF had an office in the building, but all of the employees received a page that morning saying don't come to work. There's video and photo of police and military removing what looks like boxes of C4 out of the building immediately after, as if some of the bombs didn't go off. Very sketchy stuff. Question after question unanswered, and another example of the U.S. government orchestrating these attacks. Check this out. The Federal Emergency Management Agency activated 11 of its urban search and rescue task forces, consisting of 665 rescue workers who assisted in rescue and recovery operations. Of course, they add that there to make FEMA seem like a benevolent, good thing, but ever since March 13th, the C-19 pandemic thing, FEMA's been in control of our country completely. So it doesn't even matter who our president is. There is no government. It's just FEMA, because we're in a national emergency. Like, you can literally go ask your congressman, and they should be able to explain that. They should say, yes, that's true, because that's really what is going on. But I wouldn't be surprised if half of the representatives, especially where I live, didn't even know that. This is January 20th, 2021. This is our government right now. FEMA. So, Oklahoma City bombing. There's a 1993 World Trade Center bombing as well. And then, of course, we have 2001, September 11th, right? I mean, I think at this point we all know the truth about September 11th. Big hard pill to swallow. But why I'm showing you all of these is because event after event after event starts to take a toll on the society as a whole. And we get to the point where in 2001, hold on, I gotta find the right video. It's still on YouTube somewhere, I think. Yeah, here it is. Watch this. So we're at the point where they'll tell us that 2 planes destroyed 3 towers and people believe it. How could we get to that point? It's from the desensitizing of the people. That's World Trade Center 7 being destroyed by explosives. Obviously. Watch again. They announced that World Trade Center 7 had fallen something like 23 minutes before it actually had on a British news channel. It was literally live in the background when she said it had fallen. It was still standing. And, how does society have this evidence and not do anything? And it's because groups like Tavistock were able to clinically prove how to subdue the people. Yesterday's episode, we went far into the Tavistock reading, and it goes on to talk about 90% of people being dullards and how they need to get that number closer to 100%. And it's through this constant trauma-induced mind control. That's how they're getting us to that level. We have people in Portland, Maine wearing 2 masks. I haven't seen a triple mask yet. But the fact that anybody is wearing a mask still is crazy. But as you can see, their work is very effective. And that brings me back to space. That the more trickery and the more deception and the more fakery they can add to the average person's life, the more power they have over them. Because knowledge truly is power. It truly, truly is. If somehow we could wake up the whole world and just tell them God is real and that these people are evil, it would be wonderful. But we can't do that because we have 8 million layers of lies to get through. You see what I mean? I'll probably be ridiculed and doxxed and called a fool for the rest of my life for the things I say on this channel. But it's what we got to do. It's what Bill Cooper did. He wasn't scared. It's what we all have to do. Absolutely crazy. So as you can see, of course, one thing we got to talk about is once Obama becomes president, did you notice how all the school shootings stopped? Yeah. Where'd they go? Oh my God. Let's see, ABC News. School shootings in America. See a map of all the incidents from 2010 to 2019. Look at this. Where'd they all go? Why'd they stop?
Marvel Studios' first series.
I don't know. Makes no sense, right? And they're only in America. Literally 0 in Canada. 0 in South America. Oh, maybe they're only showing America. But I wouldn't be surprised. It's just ridiculous, dude. It's all a psychological operation to keep us traumatized, to keep us desensitized to violence, to keep us from critically thinking, to increase bureaucracy, to increase government power, to strip us of our rights, to take our guns, to paint certain groups as being evil, to pit the people against each other. It's just pathetic. But hey, at least they stopped, right? That was weird. After that crazy Las Vegas one where they killed 60 people. It kind of stopped. So manufactured. You should watch the documentary we need to talk about. Here, I'll actually Google. I'll show you type because I can't see the words. Just type that into DuckDuckGo and watch that documentary. I never thought that would be true. I never thought space would be fake. All these things are ridiculous to me. I didn't believe them at all. Then just look through it and you find out. And you do your homework. Okay, I think we might be done. I think the documentary might be over. That might have been all of it. Yeah, I think we're good. I want to thank you guys for watching. And I'm just making sure I don't have anything else. Yeah, we did it. That was a great time. So we'll keep talking about important history stuff. We'll keep talking about the news, what's going on. So I'll probably be back tomorrow. I'll see you guys then.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumphs of 1940-41. The United Nations have inflicted upon the Germans great defeats in open battle, man to man. Our air offensive has seriously reduced their strength in the air, and their capacity to wage war on the ground. Our home fronts have given us an overwhelming superiority in weapons and munitions of war, and placed at our disposal great reserves of trained fighting men. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.